Hello, welcome to FightCore USA.
When people refer to Dana White privilege, they mean something very specific, and it might be one of the most controversial topics in all of MMA today. It is basically a term used by fans and even some fighters that insinuate when someone gets special treatment from Dana White, the president of the UFC, and gets opportunities that other fighters don't necessarily get, typically because they have a big personality or an exciting fighting style or just the way they carry themselves. And while there are some fighters who seemingly get opportunities before they necessarily ready for them based on their record, it's important to remember the UFC is a business first. So, entertaining the audience is at least as important as crowning the best athletes as champions. Meet that side. Here are 5 examples of Dana White privilege and what it looks like in action. Number 5, Mike Perry. This guy is a welterweight fighter who made a name for himself by knocking out opponents and being an exciting person to watch. Despite the fact that he has never been a champion or even come close to the top 5 at any point during his UFC career, he was given the opportunity to headline a UFC event. Not only that, but he headlined 2 events back to back. You have to go way down to the bottom of the barrel to find a fighter with fewer UFC victories. Tom Perry was headlined an event. Perry also got the opportunity to fight Nate Diaz in his last outing, despite being ranked, 12 at the time, and having a losing record inside the octagon. Diaz had lost his previous fight and was coming off a 6-year layoff, yet he was given the opportunity to fight a top 15 opponent. It seems like this happened because Perry is an exciting fighter who brings a lot of energy to every single event he competes at. And also because he called Nate Diaz out repeatedly and made it known that he wanted to fight him. So when the opportunity arose for Diaz to return, many expected Perry to be his opponent. One thing that makes Perry's situation unique is that he's not particularly talented. He can be exciting at times, but he's not a particularly good grappler or striker. And he's actually worse in the areas you would expect him to excel in, like striking. Number 4, Paige in her defense, Von Sant was a popular figure in women's MMA, and she crossed over into mainstream media several times, appearing on TV shows like Dancing with the Stars. That alone put her in the conversation with some of the biggest stars in the UFC, regardless of what division they competed in. Von Sant was also extremely active on social media long before it was cool to do so as an athlete. She was often seen posting pictures on Instagram and keeping fans updated on her life both in and outside the gym. But despite her popularity, she wasn't particularly successful inside the octagon. Despite never being ranked and competing at a catch weight of 115 pounds, Von Sant was given the opportunity to fight for the flyweight championship against Amanda Nunes. To make matters worse, Von Sant was coming off a 2-fight losing streak and had UN competed in almost 2 years prior to the match. Somehow she still got the opportunity to challenge for a title. It should be noted that Von Sant has since left the UFC, and she was traded to the promotion she currently fights for, Bare Knuckle FC, in exchange for another fighter named Rachel. Many people speculated that the reason for that trade was because Von Sant was no longer worth the money that the UFC was paying her, especially considering how infrequently she competed. No. 3, Tyron Woodley. There's no doubt about it. Tyron Woodley is one of the most recognizable faces in the UFC. He's been featured in movies and commercials and is always willing to speak his mind. All of that, combined with his impressive wrestling background, makes him a pretty intriguing character. Although Woodley has had a lot of success in the UFC, including winning the welterweights championship twice, he's never really been able to live up to the hype surrounding him, and he hasn't competed in the top 5 of welterweight since 2017. Still, he was given the opportunity to fight for the interim welterweight title against Gilbert Burns. This isn't to say that Wood doesn't deserve the opportunity, but more so to show that if he were any less marketable as a person, he probably wouldn't have gotten a shot. Woodley is also a massive welterweight at 6'1", and if he were any less marketable, he likely would have competed at middleweight instead, which is where his last victory took place. No. 2. Conor McGregor, probably the biggest star in the history of the UFC. McGregor has done things that no other fighter ever has, like simultaneously holding 2 UFC championships in 2 different weight classes. He has also sold more pay-per-views than any other fighter in history, even though some of those fights weren't even for titles. Not only that, but McGregor has been featured on the cover of Sports Illustrated and ESPN magazines, and has appeared on countless TV shows and talk shows throughout his career. If there was such a thing as a crossover athlete in MMA, it's probably McGregor. That being said, he's been inactive inside the octagon for quite some time. His last fight taking place in July of 2021. And despite the fact that he has 1, 2, 3 in his last 3 bouts, he is still in line for a championship fight against the winner of the upcoming Islam Makhachev versus Charles Oliveira fight. If McGregor somehow comes out on top against either of those fighters, he will become the first fighter in UFC history to win 3 championships in 3 different weight classes. Now, whether or not this is Dana White privilege or just respect for one of the greatest fighters of all time remains to be seen. Number 1, Francis Ngannou is a heavyweight fighter who has been knocking people out left and right in the UFC. He has the most knockouts in heavyweight history, and he's currently riding a 4-fight winning streak. Despite that, he's never been ranked higher than no. 2 in the division, he's never received a title shot. Yet, he's going to be facing the current champion in his next fight, Cyril Gane, who just recently defended his title against Tai Tuivasa in a lackluster performance. Ngannou's manager has already come out and stated that the UFC offered Gane a rematch, but Gane turned it down because he wanted to face someone ranked ahead of him. But then Ngannou's manager came out and stated that the UFC later told Ngannou that Gane refused to fight him unless it was for the title. And then the UFC eventually changed their story and said that there was a medical issue with Gane that caused the delay. Regardless of how it all went down, Ngannou is set to face Gane in his next fight, and it will be for the heavyweight championship. Now, whether or not this is an example of Dana White privilege is hard to say. Gane may have been reluctant to fight Ngannou because he knows he's a dangerous puncher. And it may not have anything to do with the fact that Ngannou isn't ranked in no 1 in the division. After all, Ngannou was actually ranked no 1 in 2080 when he faced Stipe Miocic for the first time. And we all know how that one turned out. Ngannou was completely outclassed and dominated by Miasic, which was the last time he challenged for a title. In the end, whether or not you think this is an example of Dana White privilege, it's up to you. But one thing is for sure, it's highly controversial. And the UFC definitely got a lot of criticism for allowing this to happen. Do you agree or disagree that these fighters got special treat? Which one do you think was the most egregious example of Dana White privilege? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. As always, guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, stay tuned for more content.
Okay guys, thank you for watching my videos.